Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and we're back to have another conversation about the future of a post-carbon sustainable economy. We're going to talk about something I think a lot of people are going to be surprised there's a market for, and that is recycled mannequins. Judi Townsend is on a mission to keep mannequins in use to reduce the environmental impact of the retail industry. She's the founder of Mannequin Madness, an Oakland, California-based shop that sells full mannequins, dress forms, and this is literally what's listed on the site, by the way, torsos and butts, limbs, replacement parts, and even dog and cat mannequins. Who knew? Judi was new to being an entrepreneur when she started Mannequin Madness in her 60s, and it has grown into a thriving business and is a great example of how many small, local, and regional efforts can emerge to support the continued use of products in a more sustainable economy. And of course, we're going to grow that economy from the ground up. So let's learn from an innovator who's making change happen. You can find out more about Mannequin Madness at Mannequin Madness, all one word, no dash, no space, mannequinmadness.com. Welcome to the show, Judi. How are you today?
Thank you for inviting me, Mitch. And I just want to say one thing. I started this in my late 40s. I am now 65, so I've been in the recycling world for almost 20 years.
I'm sorry, I misread what I in doing the research, but congratulations on sticking with it. Now, you started this business when you decided to spend $2,500 to purchase 50 mannequins that you saw in an ad online. What made you think there was a viable business? What did you recognize about recycling and keeping mannequins in use that others missed?
Well, I knew there was a secondary market for mannequins because I had been looking for a mannequin for a while just to do as an art project. Now, these were pre-internet days, so you really couldn't easily find one unless you were actually in the retail industry and usually buying large quantities. I was shopping on Craigslist looking for concert tickets, and I saw someone was selling some mannequins. My thought was just to buy one mannequin for my art project. But when I found out the person who was selling the mannequins ran the only mannequin rental business in town and was leaving the state, I decided to buy the mannequins just because I thought it was going to be a side hustle renting mannequins. I had no idea the enormous potential that lay before me.
So how big is that potential? And tell us, who are your customers?
Whew, that's a lot. So most people assume that my customers are retailers, and there is certainly probably about 60% of my business are retailers, and that's a combination of people who are selling on sites like Poshmark or Etsy. They may just have an online store. They may have a pop-up store. It's not only retailers with a brick and mortar. But so many people need a mannequin for other purposes. I mean, besides places like museums and trade shows and production companies, a lot of individuals will purchase mannequins for, say, they're going to Burning Man or they want to do a Halloween display. I also get lawyers who need a mannequin to do a courtroom demonstration to show where someone was stabbed.
Amazing.
I said fashion students, knitters. It's even amazing to me how many people have a need for a mannequin. And that is the beauty of the internet. It allows people to find me that I might not have initially thought about marketing to.
Now, do you find that you sell primarily regionally?
No,
nationally?
All over the U.S. and Canada. I would normally be able to sell even internationally, but the cost of shipping a mannequin is so expensive that makes it cost prohibitive for someone to buy a used mannequin at a great price, but the shipping can be 4 times what they paid for it. So just U.S. and Canada.
Okay, and that makes sense from a sustainability standpoint as well. Although I just can't imagine what happened to that mannequin at Burning Man.
Sometimes they do tend to repurpose them, and that's
repurpose. I think at Burning Man is putting it mildly.
Yes, but sometimes they do come back with some of the art. And I want to say that we have zero waste policy at our warehouse. There's no mannequin that does not get used, even if it arrives in our door beat up, distressed, missing some pieces. People will always find a reason to use it for some sort of an art project.
I want to talk about your recycling program in a few minutes, but let me ask you first, you're as an older Black entrepreneur, particularly in the Bay Area, which is just youth obsessed, how did you overcome those challenges, both generationally and because of your ethnic background? You were at a disadvantage. How did you grow the business to the point where you were able to literally quit a job and open a warehouse?
Even more challenging, I'm in the fashion industry, which is completely youth oriented.
Yeah.
There were 2 things. Number one, I was still doing it as a side hustle initially, and then 9/11 happened. And 9/11 was not unlike now, where there was a seismic shift in our consciousness, and people were started thinking about what they wanted to do differently with their life. Even though at that time the mannequin business was still fledgling, it wasn't really self-sustaining. I
Mhm.
know that if this is our end of days and time, I want to do something that I enjoy. So I led with my passion and didn't really think so much about the age factor. Granted, I work with mannequins, which never age, so I certainly am around youthful people all the time. All the bodies around me are young. But I think the biggest advantage was the internet. The rise of the internet happened shortly after I started the business. And it allowed me to be basically transparent online. No one knew that they were buying mannequins from a Black woman in Oakland who at the time was selling mannequins out of their backyard.
Mhm.
All they saw was they had a product that they liked. The same thing when I started working with retailers. I was saving them money by offering them to recycle their mannequins for free. So those who didn't really care so much about the sustainability part of putting mannequins in the landfill liked the idea of saving money because it costs a lot of money to throw mannequins away. You need huge dump bins. So because I offered them a service and it was free, that overcame the barriers of my age and race and location. It would have been very different if I was asking them to purchase a product from me. I'm pretty sure I would not have been as successful.
So this is kind of an entrepreneurialism 101 question, but let me ask this. Successful small businesses really succeed based on their willingness to get intimately involved in the details of a specific product or service. And that makes them a reliable, trusted source for customers. You picked this, let's just call it a kind of obscure area of mannequin recycling. How did you learn?
That's why I called it Mannequin Madness, because most people, including my parents, thought I was crazy when I first got started. Okay?
So you were crazy. So you're crazy. How did you take crazy and turn it into the expertise that has made you literally, one of the leading sources of mannequin and mannequin related knowledge?
First, I'm in the Bay Area, as you said, which is a place where there's a lot of disruptors. Now, it may be more technology disruptors, but I feel like I'm a disruptor when it comes to the mannequin industry. I came in this industry with no prior experience in retail. In fact, I had never even touched a mannequin before. I just like mannequins from the artistry of things. So that just then led to the other opportunities. Secondly, when you no longer have a full-time source of income, as I said, my day job ended when 9/11 happened, that it forced me to be creative in ways I wouldn't have thought possible. It's fortunate that I really loved mannequins, so I spent a lot of time learning about them, blogging about them, putting information on Pinterest and social media when that came along. And that allowed me to be perceived as the expert. And I also asked a lot of questions. I was actually a journalism major. So I went into this probably with more experience than just learning more so than being an entrepreneur. In fact, it took me a while to even consider myself an entrepreneur because there wasn't anybody who looked like me doing not just mannequins, but just in general. An entrepreneur is normally considered a white man from Stanford with venture capital money working in the tech industry. So that's one reason I really love talking on shows like this, is to let people know that entrepreneurship comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. So it probably wasn't until about 5 years into the business that I really thought, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Before that, I was just kind of hustling, finding different ways to find customers. But that's what entrepreneurship is.
Very well put. I agree with the characterization, the Silicon Valley characterization of an entrepreneur. However, the world is full of business opportunities. When you look around and you think about what you've accomplished with Mannequin so far, do you see other product categories that are just waiting for somebody like you? And what might those be?
Well, that's a good question. I just feel like in general, if people start thinking about how can this be used in a different way? I always say my mantra is I find new uses for old things. And that even includes myself, because technically I should be retired right now. And instead, I'm looking at different ways to further expand the mannequin business with kind of related kind of projects. Like a lot of people do DIY projects with mannequins. So we've started doing Zoom classes to show them how to do it, since obviously we have the product. And we're also going to start having more classes in our studio now that COVID is pretty lifted and people are feeling great gathering, and doing something with your hands really has been known to relieve stress and anxiety. We thought, wow, we've got mannequins that's a perfect canvas for people to be able to utilize their creative skills. So while it's not recycling mannequins per se, it's still adjacent to my current business.
Sure.
So always looking for new opportunities to grow. And I just think when you like what you're doing, you'll find different kind of ways. I just thought I was going to be renting mannequins, but I went from renting mannequins to recycling mannequins locally. Now I recycle mannequins on a national basis. I've also had to diversify my inventory, so I also have new mannequins, but my passion is toward the used mannequins.
Well, so even with the new mannequins, you have a program that'll take them back when people are done with them, it sounds like.
Yeah, correct, absolutely. And sometimes, especially some of the larger retailers will actually ship their mannequins to me if they're out of the area. Often, what I do if there's say a retail chain like the Gap contacts me and they're recycling mannequins or remodeling in all their stores. Right. I have different contacts throughout the country. So I'm not going to go to Minneapolis, for example, and bring mannequins here. But instead, I will then contact my person in Minneapolis. They'll pay me a referral fee and they go pick up the mannequins. So I've created a network, once again, back to the internet. Without the internet, it wouldn't have been possible. So that I become a one-stop shop to make it easy for national retailers to recycle. They no longer have to hunt and find someone in different cities. They call me, I'll do the work for them. If I don't happen to have someone in that city, either we can come up with an agreement where I may pay to ship them to me, they may pay, we may split the cost. Every deal is a little bit different.
That is fascinating. And so what you actually have is a network of hyper-local recycling options for mannequins, and that didn't exist before.
Absolutely. Because no one really thought about it for starters, because once again, people, just like the movie Mannequin, people were just automatically throwing mannequins in the trash if they no longer had a use for them. Didn't matter if they were still in good condition. It was just like, oh, we've had that for a couple of years, time for a new style. So first of all, it was just changing the paradigm. And then I think coming in as I said, an outsider, I was about building partnerships. Technically, these other used mannequin vendors in other parts of the country are my direct competitors. But I'd rather keep the mannequin out of the landfill. And secondly, I'm not going to get a mannequin if it's located in Kansas City. I might as well let some local person get it. And often mannequins are purchased by local people anyway who don't want to pay the shipping. So I feel like it's kind of a win-win. I'm really big on that whole circular economy thing. So the fact that I'm keeping a mannequin out of the landfill, helping somebody in a local business get some inventory and then sell it to somebody local. I mean, that's just beautiful. And
so you're talking about a form of sharing.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist in traditional business that only looks at the bottom line because they see any missed opportunity for revenue, even if it's revenue that would not be profitable, like shipping a mannequin from Kansas City to Oakland. You're thinking about it instead as enabling the reuse and counting that as a win.
Absolutely, Mitch. Said it. Well said. I was just doing it. I didn't really consciously think about the whole strategy behind it. It's just more like my natural tendency to like, what can we do here? And I think if more people started looking at whatever product that they're working with in those manners, it would be different.
So your site says that you recycle about 100,000 pounds of mannequin material in a year. How many mannequins is that? That sounds like there's a vast population of mannequins out there I didn't know about.
And actually, Mitch, it's more than that now. That's when we were only doing it on a local basis. We probably, now that we facilitate things nationally, recycle that many mannequins, I'd say, every other month, or at least once a quarter. That's roughly about 500 mannequins.
Okay.
100,000 pounds.
Really?
The average mannequin is about 20 pounds. It's made out of materials like fiberglass, often has a metal base.
Mm-hmm.
It also has metal attachments. Sometimes there's also glass on there. There are also some dress forms that are made out of styrofoam. These are highly toxic materials that do not belong in landfills. I always say mannequins are beautiful to look at in the store window, but they're terribly toxic if you put them in the landfill. So I think just raising the awareness about, hey, does this really need to go into the landfill? Could somebody else use this for something else? And I said, people use them for all kinds of purposes. A lot of private individuals will use a mannequin as, say, a scarecrow or a decoy, or maybe they just like wanted to put one of their favorite outfits that they can no longer wear on the mannequin. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think the fascination with the human form, and I think it's kind of unique that I do have a product that has a lot of universal appeal. I have worked with every age group, every income, every gender. It's really a product that has real, and when I say every gender, because in the Bay Area, we have a lot of non-binary people.
Sure.
It's not just male and female anymore. Every sexual orientation, every strata of society has either come into my brick and mortar or they purchase something from me online.
Now, this is just really interesting in terms of rethinking the use of old stuff, and not just you and I. The economy is just full of wasteful niches, and as you look around and think about all the opportunities to reuse material in various ways, what advice do you have for others who are thinking about taking something that we currently treat as waste and turning it into something valuable?
Well, everybody's experience is different. I mean, I'm not involved with manufacturing. I wish that I was, because I would love to find a way to reuse plastic bottles and manufacture something else. So I think everyone has to just work on whatever their particular expertise or personal passion is. I think it's just a matter of just changing the conversation so people start at least just thinking in that way. You got to first sort of like till the soil before you can plant anything. So if we're already just even starting to think about where else can I find an opportunity to recycle something, someone may come up with an idea that we hadn't even thought about. So I can't really say there's like a direct path other than just, like I said, a shift in consciousness creates a shift in action.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about on the show a number of times with different organizations is this idea that lower income communities could start to build industries out of the waste that we currently have just sent to landfill. But there are also social equity issues in that. But as you just said, when you find something you can be passionate about and turn it into a business, there are a lot of benefits to that. Benefits that may at least paper over the sense that you're doing a job that is low income. And of course, I'm not saying what you're doing is low income at all, but you did transform it from something that was a side gig into a real business. How do you encourage people in a lower income community to get involved and create that value from recirculation of materials? Do you have any good advice for folks?
You're getting a little bit out of my expertise on that one, Mitch. I really can't give you a straight answer on that. But when we were talking, I thought about all the shipping containers that we have at our port. And I love the fact that many people now are converting these shipping containers into housing or pop-up or some sort of real estate related venture. I also heard about a lady who has a business where she takes old like trucks, like box trucks, and she turns them into mobile retail establishments. So people who want to have a pop-up, they just rent the truck from them and they take the truck and then fill it with their merchandise. And they go to different locations. Maybe it's a festival or a weekend kind of event. I'm thinking, who would have thought of that?
There's value everywhere.
There is value everywhere. So it's not necessarily limited to income, but the advantage is then she makes it possible for smaller businesses who many times don't have the money and the resources to have a brick and mortar store. It allows them to build a presence. Almost like look at the food truck revolution. At one time a food truck was considered a roach coach, a place you didn't want to eat. Now you have all these gourmet kind of places doing a food truck. So, and then that once again creates opportunities for people who could not always afford.
Well, and that I actually think is the answer to the question I was asking, which is, we treat jobs as downscale until they become upscale. Chefs are giving up the idea of owning a restaurant and going with a truck. And that sort of distributed approach to that case, a services business, is something that we can think about applying across the economy in order to create this more hyper-local approach to circularity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how can our listeners learn more about Mannequin Madness or maybe get their own mannequin?
So certainly they can go to my website, but I'm also on every social media platform there is, including TikTok. I still feel so funny being in my 60s getting on TikTok. But you said something, Mitch, and I just want to say, I think we need all different people cooperating together. Mm-hmm. So many times I think we've been separated by, race and income and neighborhood. And to really help to make our planet more sustainable is going to require that we all kind of work together to find different uses.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons I'm so passionate about my mannequin recycling is because, unfortunately, many landfills are located in communities of color.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one area where I can make a difference. Now, somebody else might have another product that they're passionate about. And they just like now we think about not using single-use bags, right? Most people are at least aware of the need to kind of have their own recycled bag that they carry with them to go shopping. That didn't exist, maybe 15 years ago? And I'm sure it's not maybe widely accepted every place, but at least people are aware of it. And it's like that kind of a shift where we just took it for granted that you would have a plastic bag that you threw away. Now, if we think about, well, what else can I do? And I think that's always the question, like, what else can I do? And it can be fun. I think so many times people think that recycling or being in the environmental industry, they kind of have a certain look or feeling of what someone must look like to do that. I'm having fun in the fashion industry. I'm on the outskirts, but it's like, who would have thought that I could be an environmentalist? It doesn't mean out there, being, this is nothing to say about Greenpeace or something like that, but I'm not a Birkenstock wearing, flag wearing environmentalist. I just find something that could have been reused and it wasn't, and I created a niche for it. And my website makes it possible for other people to participate.
Well, Judi, it's an inspiration to talk with you and to hear about how you, as you just put it, you turned environmentalism into an everyday practice without having to make it about the environmentalism. It's about making a useful and sustainable life.
Yeah, I didn't have to change who I was. I just changed some of my actions.
That's a fantastic point, and I think a great place to end the conversation. I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
We've been talking with Judi Townsend. She is the founder of Mannequin Madness in Oakland, California, and you can find out more about Mannequin Madness at mannequinmadness.com, all one word with no dash, no space. It's a real inspiration to listen to Judi talk about rethinking the usefulness of stuff. And, if, as I can recall, a world that was largely without plastic when I was young, 50, 60 years ago, today we have so much plastic that we need to stop using it. This is an example of how we can rethink everything and make it happen over the course of a few decades. If the plastic industry could take over, we can take back a lot of our lives from single-use plastic, and we can do it by thinking about the materials around us and how to reuse them more effectively. This is Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. And of course, we're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, would you take a few minutes and share this podcast with your friends, your family, anybody who's thinking about creating a circular economy business is going to learn something from Judi. And of course, we have more than 260 shows that you can share with your friends and family. Do so. Get these ideas out there so that we can make this a more sustainable world. We're going to be back soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.